We've got several items to take care of, so we're going to get through these as the best that we can tonight for our next meeting. Item number 1, 2012 Bond Construction Fund for discussion only, presented by Jason Cottom, Bossier Parish Schools Engineer.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Smith, Superintendent Rowland, committee members. The remaining 2012 bond construction funds have been reconciled with our accounting department, and currently on page 14 of your handout is the April final summary. And at this time, I'd like Ms. Bamberg to come up and answer and explain this in further detail.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, so I wanted to go over this. Mr. Cottom wrote up a really good description and sent that to all of y'all for your review, but I just wanted to explain a little bit of it and make sure we were all on the same page. And so within the 2012 bond fund, we kind of got 3 buckets of money that we're going to be talking about tonight. The first bucket of money is going to be that money that it was allocated to a specific zone or district and has already been committed to a project. Okay, we've got 2 active projects that have those funds tied up in there. One of them is the Parkway Girls Field House, and that's going to be that $1.95 million. And then the other is going to be the remaining amounts on the Hot and High construction, the wing construction. We have some amounts remaining for contingencies, liquidated damages, and project closeout cost. And so those 2 amounts together are that $2.686 million that Mr. Cottom referenced. That is, they were funds that were allocated to a specific district and are under committed construction or a committed project. We also have about $2.195 million that is still out there that was committed to a specific zone at one time, but there's no active project that's eating away at that cost. So if you look at this list at the top or on page 14, this is going to be the items in black. So like Benton High has $201,000 left, and so you can go down that list. That's going to be that $2.195. The items in red, those are those committed construction projects that we just referred to. And then the other portion that is out there and available for use is the $7.5 million estimated interest and premiums that is remaining in the account. I say estimated because it earns interest each month, so that's kind of a moving number, but that's around what's in there right now. So those are the 3 buckets that we'll be talking about. That's what he has referred to in his summary. So are there any questions on the financial piece of it?
So it's about $9 million.
Yes, ma'am. That 9.6, or right at 9.7. And those totals are at the bottom, how he's broken that out.
Ms. Bamberg, in some of our conversations this week, we were talking about the bond fund balance and looking at, I know we're outside of our window as far as when the bond started and when the funds should have been spent. Can you explain a little bit that now? Are we in the penalty phase?
We are. So that's what I mentioned to Ms. Smith. We've actually started it's called arbitrage, but it's an arbitrage calculation. Our bonds are tax-exempt bonds, and so they expect you to spend it within a certain period of time. The SEC makes us do calculations to make sure that we've spent it within that time frame. That calculation had never been done, and so we started on that actually several months ago. We've been getting the information to the, I think he's an actuary that's calculating it all for us, and he's been giving us the information back, and you have to go bond by bond. All of the bonds were fine until the last one, and we've gone beyond our 3-year period, and so we are starting to accrue some potential penalties. Now that one's not locked in. That report has not been submitted yet. We're hoping we can go back and double check and just make sure all that's properly reported as committed the way it should be. And so, but the penalty that came on the latest report, which again we're trying to continue to work on, was $60,000. If the balance stays where it is, then we will have another $60,000 next year. We will have another $60,000 the next. So it really is, I would like to go ahead and get the bond fund spent down, which is kind of what we've been talking about, really wanting to go ahead and spend those funds.
Can you talk about our dedicated construction fund and an idea that you had about possibly moving those amounts?
Yes, ma'am,
into-
absolutely. We talked about a couple of the projects, so a few of the districts have money, so for instance, we were talking about Parkway has a money, fund set aside for potential land purchase. That has not come to fruition yet, but they're still working on that, but we don't know how long that would possibly be before they spend those funds. What I asked Ms. Smith is, we do have the general fund committed construction fund, or it's the committed construction fund that was a set aside from the general fund. Because it is not bond funds, we're not under any kind of arbitrage or penalties or any type of time constraint on spending that funds. So one idea I had is possibly take some of these committed projects and do that set aside or reserve within the committed construction fund. That way the funds are still available, but we can go ahead and use the bond fund on needs that we can spend it down now. That way we can go ahead and get the cash balance, the bond fund's fully depleted, but we still have that reserve set aside in the committed construction fund for those projects that we're not able to complete at this time.
Does the board have any questions or concerns about doing that or understand?
Ms. Bamberg, the balance of the committed construction fund one more time.
37 million, roughly. It's got some interest earnings, but yes, sir, 37 million.
Mr. Cochran?
Ms. Nisha, thank you. Was that your recommendation that we do that we move the money from one to the general fund? Is that a recommendation you're making?
That is what I would recommend, it's one possible solution. Now, if y'all have plans to go ahead and spend the full 9 million and we think we can get it spent pretty quickly, then absolutely, let's go ahead and spend it. I just don't want to continue to sit on projects that we don't think are going to be actively moving and keep that money set aside in the bond fund. If we think it's any of those projects, I would like to move those balances over to committed construction so that we can get the bond fund spent.
And the way that Ms. Bamberger and I kind of came to this when we were having a discussion yesterday or day before yesterday, we were looking at, yes, some of the money will be utilized, and there's even some projects on tonight's agenda that could utilize some of those, but there are other things, just say, for example, the largest one is the Parkway South Bossier Improvement Plan for land acquisition. That was set aside to possibly purchase land where the turning lane would be put in if we needed to do that. Well, right now, that's not something that we could achieve immediately, but as long as that stays in this fund, then we're going to be assessed penalties on it. So I know there's a concern about, the schools that had dedicated funds there having an urgency to spend their money and us not being able to make the best decisions and really study what we need to do. So in transferring this, it would to the other fund, it would give us the opportunity to free those funds up, but people not lose their little pot of whatever they're thinking, and then we're not going to be assessed penalties on it, but that it would release some of these bond funds where maybe we could even use those for the projects that are listed here tonight. We could use it for deferred maintenance stuff for Mr. Roget. He's going to talk about that in a little bit, but he's got large air conditioning projects coming up. But at least we wouldn't be losing this money at $60,000 or more a year if our interest continues to go up, and then we're losing that, which that $60,000 could pay for even some of the projects that are on our list tonight. So that was an idea that she came up with, and I just wanted her to share that with y'all because it just makes, sense to protect kind of everybody's pot where they don't feel like that they're just going to go out and need to spend it right now for maybe something that's not as necessary as something else.
Understood.
For clarification, this money has to be spent towards projects. This cannot go towards salaries, payrolls, anything. It has to be used for buildings, grounds.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah,
that-
it's got to be for construction or maintenance,
That's what I thought.
so.
Yes, and maybe I'm jumping the gun here.
Yes, ma'am.
The 400,000 that's been frozen out at Houghton,
Yes, ma'am.
do we have any idea of how long that's going to be frozen? Because
No,
right
ma'am.
now, you're saying don't spend it.
Right, that's part of our legal counsel. So right now, I do not have a timeline.
I mean, could it,
Could
you
be
don't have
years.
any idea? Okay,
It
so it's
depends
just all
depends on
tied
how
up
deep the
in,
litigation goes.
Okay.
It could be years.
could be used.
So we're just, I can send you an update.
Yeah, I just was wondering if, if we had any idea if it would be months, years? I mean, that's a lot of money sitting out
Yes,
there
ma'am.
that can't be used.
From past experiences with litigation on construction like this, he is correct. It's not going to be a month. months.
Years?
It's going to be years.
Okay.
We've seen this in the past, and it takes multiple years to get through the court systems and the disputes.
Okay. Is that the only money tied up with the legal things right now with that project? Am I asking something I'm not supposed to be?
No, ma'am, no. That is, and I could probably tell you the line number 8, the 134,000. That is some monies, there's some credits due to the owner. There's some still money to be paid out. We're working that out now.
Okay.
That would be part of additional litigation where he feels entitled to. We don't, there's,
And I
this
don't
is-
want to get into any,
Sure, sure.
I
But I
just
would
was
say-
wondering how long it would be tied up.
so those two, I would say line number 6, the contingency money, barring any, that money's set aside after construction if there's oddities that come up, things that are, maybe we're sort of missing
Yes,
design.
sir.
I'm not design errors, but things.
Yes, sir.
We need this here,
Yeah.
that there. So that money could be freed up and added to the, I'm gonna call it the general current line number 4. So Halton's could increase
Okay.
419 to 620.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Sure.
Thank you for
Yes,
clearing
ma'am.
that up. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussions on item number 1?
Ms. Smith,
Mr. Rowland?
spoke to Mr. Self, and he's going to give our attorney a call to see what kind of time frame we're looking at for that Halton issue, and so we'll get that information back to you.
Thank you.
Well, this item was for discussion only. I know Ms. Bamberg did bring up of transferring of those funds. So we'll either have to add an agenda item to make action on that item. Is that correct? If we're willing to do that?
I think
Mr.
Mr. Self, I think he wanted to check to make sure that there was no penalty for us to move it. Wanted to make sure we had everything in order,
Okay.
right, Will?
Those monies are under dispute with the other party, which is why they're being held. Like I said, I believe there's a way, county-wise, to make sure we're still holding that money just for pending the outcome.
But just on that particular item, not on all the other, not on the remainder, just on that particular that's
On that
involved
particular-
with legal.
that particular item.
So do we have to have an agenda to make a motion if anyone wants to do that with the funds for tonight? Because since it was just,
This was put on for discussion only, so we need to make a motion to add it to the agenda. It would need to be unanimous, and then we would need to ask for public comment before we voted on it. But that's the steps we would need to take.
okay. Does the board have a pleasure of whether they would
I'll
want to
make a
choose
motion to, is that what?
to
add that
add to the agenda?
Yes,
Okay.
to add to the agenda.
Do we have a second?
Before I second, I just want to make sure I know what I'm seconding, because I was a couple minutes late. We're adding an agenda item for funds to be,
Transferred to for the,
Discussion.
what we talked about with the, like Benton High School, Benton Intermediate designated funds to be transferred out of the bond money into the dedicated construction fund, but to still have like that designation for that
on
pot
the,
of money.
as a line item. Okay. I
Yes.
second. I just want to make sure that's what we're
Okay.
talking about, so I just want to make sure I second.
Yes, sir. So we have a first, a motion and a second. All in favor, please vote by show of hands. It's unanimous. So we will add that, I guess we'll just add it at the end. And we'll come back to that for action. Okay, item number 2, request, BPSB program review, professional service fee request. Mr. Cottom.
Yes, thank you. So this item is, has to deal with SGB Architects. I'd like to recognize Mr. Babineau is here in the audience. If there's any questions that the board would like for him to answer. So in May of '23, I was asked to determine how we could expand the Bristol campus. And the idea was to look at expanding culinary arts, welding, the 8th and 9th grade academy, which now, as I believe, the 8th grade has been removed, and the ag programs. The one challenge with this campus is it's a very unique school, and just determining like a school wing, a square foot, a cost, this is a completely different challenge. So you almost have to go and interview staff, figure out what is needed, then from there you have to go find the equipment, the sizes that drives the size of the building. There's the cost for the equipment. So this was challenging. So in June, I engaged Mr. Babineau and his firm to help develop this. His firm did the initial bridging documents for the first campus. I'm calling the initial build. So he has spent, so we had our, in April of this year, we had our presentation. So it's taken some time to develop this. He's completed that review, and at this point, the request is just to fund his services.
So this is just for architectural services, this is not
Professional.
any actual brick and mortar modifications,
No, sir.
anything? This is strictly so we
Professional
can get
services.
a design concept to see if we want to move forward with anything.
Yes, sir.
And what is that dollar amount?
$147,467.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we proceed with that. I know Mr. Cottomite also asked you, does this affect, the closing of the 8th grade academy affect the need for this?
Well, and how this is broken down, it was basically 5 different, I'm gonna call it buildings, 5 different sectors. So one of them was the idea of a 2-story expansion for the 8th and 9th grade academy. So having the removal of the 8th grade does free up some additional classroom space. So I would say that item would probably no longer be needed at this time. But the other 4 could be under consideration in some form. You know, this is in a sense a master plan of what this campus could be at this current time in the request. So,
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I'd make a motion that we approve to pay these funds. Mr. Babineau and his firm have always done a great job, so I want to make sure we make them whole.
Okay, we have a question first. Mr. Bullard.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just curiosity, when will we receive the report on this, where we have something in black and white showing the end product of Mr. Babineau's
we can
service?
send, Mr. Babineau, do you mind? If you have, do you look at what that is? Okay. Do we have a more extensive thing than that, or is that?
That's it right now.
Okay.
So to answer your question, what we presented back in April were preliminary designs for each of the 5 areas, floor plans, a site plan, equipment layouts, some rough 3-dimensional renderings, and estimates. So we've already put a package together. I think that may...
We have it. I would just want to make sure there wasn't
Yeah.
more to that, so we can get that email out.
We put it together in the form of a PowerPoint presentation that we gave to the administration. I think it's about 12 or 15 slides, and that's certainly available to you.
And it's in your hand, it basically in page 15 to 22 in the back.
There's
that is
attached
it.
here.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Okay.
And that may be hard to read, I was just trying to get it, I didn't want to have 100 pages in front of you tonight.
And if you want a more formal presentation, I'd be happy to do that at your convenience.
So, Mr. Babineau, this is already work that you've completed.
Yes, ma'am.
So is there any additional information coming for that invoice
No,
fee?
no, that's it. We worked about 8 months, sent you one invoice once we completed it. Now, there's a little bit more work to do, but we're asked to hold up at that point. If you're looking, I think you're looking at the presentation, the estimate for all those 5 wings was about $31.6 million. And then there was another $5 million worth of furniture, fixtures, and equipment. Keep in mind, you've got 2 large culinary arts kitchens. That equipment's very expensive. You've got a much larger welding program, much larger expanded welding program. That's pretty expensive equipment. And so when we design this, we first of all meet with the staff on multiple occasions, get a list of all the equipment they need to teach their subject so that that student can graduate with the proper certification. We take that equipment, lay it out, so we really design from the inside out. And so the equipment determines the building size, and that's kind of how we determined it.
Well, the concern that I have is just the scope of work that has been done before presented to the board of a 40-something million project, and I don't know how it grew to that size of a project with the detail, and I know that that can lead to that sometimes with depending on who you're interviewing and wants and needs.
That's why we only take it to that stage at this point. It's really, you've got to do some work to get a budget, and if you don't have enough accurate information to begin with, you can't really get an accurate budget. So meeting with the staff on multiple occasions to really find out the equipment they need. Some of the equipment's very large, and you need space around the equipment to properly use the equipment. And so it takes that much effort. And it's the exact same thing we did for the first time. We met with every staff member at Dipstal the first time around 10 years ago, and went through the same process, really designing from the inside out. And so this was really the same process, just for a somewhat different scope. I don't think anyone had any idea what it was really going to take, and so you would never have gotten a number unless we put forth that effort to get to the square footage we could determine was a reasonable number.
But I would have liked for the board to be able to say, okay, we want to make some improvements here, and we have a budget of X amount of money, instead of developing something that came to that amount and then working back to an invoice for that. That's my personal opinion.
I understand.
But we do have a motion. Another question? Mr.
Just to follow up to your comments, Madam Chairman, I think it would be appropriate for this formal presentation to be brought back to the committee for review so that we have a better grasp of exactly what we're talking about, and we can ask questions about the inherent characteristics involved in each of the phases or each of the instructional units, be it welding or fire or whatever. So it's a little better identified. I'll second the motion, by the way, but I would like to
Okay, we'll get that scheduled.
just have a little more definitive information.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Motion passes. All right, thank you. Number 3, request LA-USSSA Pride Gold Extended Facility Usage Agreement for Bossier High School softball field, presented by Mr. Cottom.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. This is a facility usage request. This is a 14U fast pitch softball team that's requesting to use Bossier High softball field at Russian Middle School twice a week. All their contract agreements and certificate insurance has been submitted, and everything is in good order.
Any questions?
Is there anything in that about them just keeping the place tidy and making sure that they put things back and don't leave trash? We got like...
Yes.
I mean, I support people using our facilities, but at the same time, I want to make sure that it is left possibly better than it is found.
It is. The hold harmless and insurance, all that covers that.
Yeah, so moved, Madam Chairman.
Do we have a motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Bullard. Please vote. Motion passes. Number 4, request Elevation Baseball Extended Facility Usage Agreement for Bossier High School baseball field. Mr. Cottom.
Okay, again, this is a request for a baseball team to use the Bossier High School baseball field at Russian Middle School. Practice weekly from now until the end of June. Once again, their contract and certificate of insurance has been submitted and everything's in order.
So moved, Madam Chairman.
Motion, second by Ms. Poole. Please vote. Motion passes. Number 5, request above all sports facility usage agreement for Parkway High School and Elm Grove Middle School Gymnasium. Mr. Cottom?
Yes, ma'am. This is a organization that's putting on a 3-day tournament at 2 of our schools, Parkway High School and Elm Grove Middle School, using the 4 gymnasiums. This is basically their 4th annual Mudbug Fest. It's an AAU basketball tournament that gives back to the students in our parish. Hold harmless agreement has been completed and approved, and certificate of insurance has been submitted, and all the, everything's in order with this.
Okay. Committee's pleasure.
I do have a question.
Mr.
Yes,
Newman?
sir.
It says giving back to the students in the parish. What kind, do we have any
So-
kind of insight into that?
Yes, sir. So this organization, as I understand it, they provide the students that I believe who participate this with MacBook Pros, printers, and software for college for the seniors. So that's what was described to me.
Any other questions?
So moved, Madam Chairman.
Moved by Mr. Newman. Second by Mr. Bullard. Please vote. Unanimous. Thank you. Number 6, request land acquisition, 55 acres located at 5401 Shed Road. Presented by Jason Cottom and Mr. Roget.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. We had provided, we sent our final offer on May 3rd to the Arc of Acadiana. The 5 items are listed here in your handout. They did add extension for a month-to-month lease basis up to 4 months additional. This is to sort of foresee any construction delays in them either renovating or constructing a new facility. So in essence, the lease terms would be a 12-month minimum up to a 16-month.
Okay.
Cotton, what was that initial asking price?
The listing price, it was listed for 5.3 million.
Mr. Roget, I know y'all
Yes.
put together some information about what
Yes,
type of work would need to be done for, can you kind of share?
Yes, ma'am. We're open for any questions. You want to take the-
Can you kind of share, like, did you look at, I think you had presented us with something, a plan?
We did, I believe we presented you with some estimates of what we were looking at long-term. And when we say long-term, we don't have really years tied to that. We just had it in individual phases. The first phase of that project was to work with the immediate admin building to fix a need of overcrowding in the system that we were trying to move into. We'd probably do that, accomplish that within the first year to get that going, and some land improvements around the area, parking lots, grading, what have you. That would be our first immediate phase that we're looking at. We did rough numbers, estimating a little over $800,000 to accomplish that. Whether that's within a year or year and a half to complete that, maybe 2, depending on how long we go. The rest of the phases would be revolve around other opportunities that we have before us right now. We have some outside opportunities of grants and what have you that we're trying to achieve. And when we get this land, we'll find out more whether we could get those grants. If we get those grants, well, then hardly any money will be spent on the rest of it. A lot of those grants will cover some of the growth of that property. We would have to get back with you on what all our final achievements of that property would end up being, right, to determine what the final number would be on that property.
And as far as the major systems, I know you looked at the air conditioning system, that's something that would probably have to be addressed.
That's correct. We're looking at that first initial building of going with a new air conditioning system, separate from what there is now. It has a plant-based chiller system that is very old. It's original to the building, not all the equipment, but the piping and what have you is original to the building. We don't want to put our faith in that. On that property, we would want to change the air conditioning system to something more appropriate and newer that would last. So that would be the first stage, is going in that one building, dismantle it from that system and put its own system in that building, and then do a little cleanup on the inside and get it ready to be moved into.
And how, when you assessed it, how much usable square footage did those buildings encompass?
Just one second.
170 something?
A lot of numbers, I gotta
Right.
look at paper.
So, total renovation, these are renovation numbers.
We got about, just roughly right now, just based off of what we're looking at, about 129,000 square feet is what we would be using. And those are estimated numbers. We get more detail looking into this property. We may find that some buildings are more useful for us and we could put back on the square footage addition, or we could delete some that just were worse off than we got from our first initial visit.
I know this is a large commitment from the board, and I know not just the asking price, but what we would have to put into it. And I understand that, but Mr. Rowland, could you share kind of your vision for this property?
Yes, ma'am, and thank you, Madam Chairman. And we continue to, this vision evolves literally day by day. And Ms. George, our military liaison supervisor, special programs, actually held a meeting yesterday on base with our commander, our bomb wing commander, and they are, they're really tuned in to this opportunity. We're in partnership, hopefully, with a DSIP grant with Barksdale. And so Ms. George began to share some of the things that the property held, and they even began to, if we were able to achieve the grant, to commit almost double the amount of money that we had even planned on, up to maybe as much as $40 million. So the opportunities for, literally speaking with Mr. Cottom and Mr. Roger today, the opportunities for the board and for this parish to see things happen that we probably cannot even imagine or think of, are there for us with the opportunities to get the grant as we move into a major culinary arts site here. Barksdale is very interested in helping us to expand that program. Also, a tremendous ROTC, and my first initial thought was JROTC is what we have here in Bossier, but they are expanding, BASE wants to expand to ROTC, to colleges and universities from around the country coming here to participate in ROTC drills and activities. So we had initially talked about a 1,000-seat performing arts center that would double as a multi-purpose center. Barksdale encouraged Ms. George yesterday to increase that to 2,000 seats. So really expanding the footprint of this property. Spoke to legislators this morning in Baton Rouge that are also tuning in this evening to see which direction the board goes so we can move on. There's an additional 35 acres that could be prescripted to the board. And, of course, there's a lot of ifs in what we're talking about, but the vision is there for Bossier schools as a whole, from Plain Dealing to Elm Grove Elementary, to have a tremendous benefit to this property.
Board questions, Mr. Bullard?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Right up front, I want to make it clear, I have been an advocate for purchase of this property. I think it presents an opportunity that these opportunities don't come along very often. And we have to take advantage of it. My concern is not with that acquisition of the property. It's what we're going to do with afterwards. We've looked at that property. And I know there's no saying you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. Well, we got some sow's ears out there. There's some properties, they are not appropriate for renovation, rescue, whatever. And I've heard no comments about demolition. I would think it would be to our benefit from a liability standpoint to begin to remove those properties. They are not suitable for anything other than take them to the ground. And I am very hopeful we're going to see these grants and what have you come about, because the potential that exists with this property can only be realized with a significant investment. And
So,
that's down the road, but go ahead, sir.
Mr. Bullard, and me and Stacy can both chime in on this. So, you know, the total square footage right now is listed at 215,000. Kind of what Stacy was saying, this vision, this is just an option that we see buildings that that have good bones and are able, and then we have some that aren't what you're leading to. So out of that 215, the 129 is the renovated areas, and we're looking at estimating demoing 67,000 square feet. A lot of that is those homes there on the 220 side. Everybody kind of notices in kind of the circulars.
Well, there's some buildings.
Yes, sir.
I
those
went
two.
into one, you know, I've heard some positive comments about it. The son of a gun is, it's just covered with mildew and mold. We can't salvage that property. They wanted, even ARC shut it down. They don't go close to it.
We've looked at all those options, and we've looked at what it takes, and we would make what we consider a professional decision of which ones we would do and not. And we were running some numbers today for a wing, just so you know. On a wing, we were looking at, we might need to build a wing.
A wing,
Just one classroom. We're running general numbers.
just a standalone
And
classroom.
I want you to compare that to this,
Okay.
because that one single-story wing, the numbers we come up today is almost $4 million.
4,
$4 million
How many
12?
classrooms?
12.
for 10 to 12 classrooms. So you compare that to what square footage we have here and the property alone, we're spending $1 million more to get,
120.
I mean, the square footage is probably 10 times what we're talking about in one wing.
as I said at the beginning, I am all for this. This is a once in a, how many year opportunity. And particularly when you consider, as Mr. Rowland alluded to, there's a potential for some additional acreage that would situate this school system for decades into the future. We'd still have to address some school sites, but insofar as the administrative and the central facilities, centralized facilities to serve the entire parish, what better location? I mean, you just can't beat it. And so I am all for it. I want to make sure that we're being prudent.
Yes, sir.
And again, we're not going to try to make a silk purse out of one of those sow's ears, because there's a couple of them out there. But I trust you, gentlemen. I don't mean to imply anything otherwise.
Thanks, sir.
But I just want to make sure that we are on the same page.
Mr. Newman?
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. A couple of questions while y'all are up there. The gym renovation in Benton, what does that cost?
Bid came in this week at 1.325.
All right, we're already started on that, right?
Contracts will be, well, you have to approve the bid this evening at the general meeting.
Okay. And that is to address overcrowding in central office?
Yes, sir.
And then y'all also referenced that this will address overcrowding as well?
Yes, sir.
How much more overcrowding are we gonna have to address for non-classroom people?
Well, we do have the evaluation center that needs to be thinned down some. It's a little overcrowded. People are on top of each other in some small areas. We are looking at moving some technology, some different spaces and things, some unloading into some old purchasing building. So there's other domino effects in this parish. And we know that there's more than what we need for administration. We're not saying this is all for administrative offices.
Right.
We're looking at the vision of the ROTCs. We're looking at some parish-wide visions as maybe even, I think we talked about possibly some pre-K, some different situations going on in these buildings and on this property.
Yeah, and I know the pre-K, you know, we mentioned Plain Deal and the Elm Grove Elementary, that pre-K is not gonna work for them. It's
And
an
we
hour
also
bus
talked
ride.
about moving some BIPSTOL programs into some of these properties possibly.
So if we move
also.
BIPSTOL into there, then the work Mr. Babineau's doing, is that irrelevant now? I'm just asking
it
questions
could be-
that I know you probably don't have the answer to, but I want to get those thoughts out there
I would say the
because
culinary arts could
we're-
migrate.
we're spending money like drunk sailors on some things that I don't
We
know if
understand.
that's what we need at the moment. And we're already doing some other things to address overcrowding, but it's all non-school level stuff. I get the auditorium and all that, but that's my concern, is I want to make sure we're putting as much into the schools as we are into our top end, if that makes sense. You know, I like the idea of the auditorium. I think that's great. What's the current capacity of the airline auditorium right down the hall?
15-ish? 12?
2,000.
Is it 2,000?
Airlines
It's
is two,
2,000.
top and bottom? Okay. And I think it's great. I mean, I think the property's a prime location. I think there's a lot of potential. I just want to make sure we're, you know, putting it in the right order, I guess is the best way. And then last question, timeline on all the grants we've been talking about. Is there, I mean, I know Ms. George is constantly working on it, Mr. Rowland is. Where are we, like, do we have any idea, like,
Believe
are
this-
some of these grants like 6 to 12 months, or are we talking 6 to 12 years?
No, so the one that's being proposed right now, and Ms. George can clarify if need be, but I believe late this fall, this large one gets awarded. And once it's awarded, we have to be under construction in 1 year and completed in a 5-year.
When you say large, how large?
Well, the grant work, the single grant that she's writing right now for the DSIP program.
That would help with these facilities?
Those monies are to be determined according to the grant and the needs of the grant. It could be as little as 9, could be 14, could be as much as 20. So those were the numbers were given to us, and so the deadline for that is June, and the award time is September.
Madam Chairman, with that, make a motion that we approve the purchase and acquisition.
Second. We have a motion and a second by Ms. Darby. Please vote. Motion approved. Thank you. I'm really excited about this project. I think that it's going to be a great thing for Bossier Parish and for, not just for administration, but for our students of Bossier Parish and the programs that'll be there. So, thank y'all for that. All right, item number 7, Plantation Park Elementary School fencing project. Mr. Roget.
Okay, item number 7 is about fencing. This was Ms. Stroud, principal of Plantation Park, requested. This will enclose some locations, approximately 340 foot of fencing for between 18 and 20. The reason I'm saying 18 to 20, we have a firm price on the fencing, but we don't have firm pricing on hardware. We still need to get with the state fire marshal to make sure that our life safety review is correct in what hardware and where we need to put it. So we just kind of put a little buffer for that, that part of it. With that being said, I want to understand, at one time, the security committee actually met on fencing throughout this parish and made some decisions. So I don't know, just so you know that we did not put security fencing throughout the parish. We decided to go a different direction at that time. So this is the board's pleasure.
Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Roget, on this one, Plantation Park and Benton, all the fencing projects, are you doing those in-house or are you going to sub those out?
So,
Okay, I was just out of curiosity. And
Yes, sir.
as, in the spirit of Mr. Wiggins, we would always
local.
prefer local Bossier Parish businesses. Thank you.
And Mr. Newman, on that note, I know that the suggested motion is to be funded out of general fund for O&M. I don't know that if we would want to make that to be funded out of the bond funds since we are, at that penalty phase where those need to be used. I'm just opening that up to the board for y'all's opinion. I don't want to slow down anything with that, or, but,
Can I add one thing, Ms. Smith? The same question goes for the land acquisition
yes.
funding question.
Okay, we'll go back to that in just a moment. So I don't know, right now it's into O&M, and I know I know Stacy's got several projects coming up this summer out of his budget, but I hate to see this money sitting here and then us be penalized on these funds when we could be using it. That penalty that we've talked about could probably pay for this fund and the next one. So if we have to utilize this money, I don't know what the board's pleasure is on that.
Madam Chairman, I'd make a motion that we approve item number 7 for the fencing, paid for out of general bond funds. Please, ma'am.
Second.
Have a motion and a second by Mr. Bullard. Please vote. Okay, and can we go back to number 6? We had the motion there. Do you want that? I guess the only one that would be large enough to fund that one out of would be the interest bond.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion that we fund item number 6, the land acquisition, out of the 2012 Bond Construction Fund interest and premium revenues that I believe are currently at 7.6 million. Is that
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yes, sir.
Second.
Make that motion.
Okay. We have a motion by Mr. Newman, a second by Ms. Darby. Please vote. Okay. All right, that what you needed, Mr.
Yes.
Cottle?
Yes.
Okay. Number 8, request Benton Elementary fencing project. Mr. Roget?
This is the same as number 7 for Benton Elementary. They're asking for approximately 323 linear feet of gates, fence and gating, and estimated $18,000 to $20,000.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion we approve this for payment out of bond funds.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Newman, a second by Ms. Poole. You have a question? Mr. Bullard, you have a question?
I was getting ready to vote.
Please vote. All right. Number 9, request Airline High School softball restroom improvements. Mr. Roget.
Airline High School has officially requested that they have some new restrooms built for the softball complex. Currently, they have a Ahern building that was improperly installed, not handicap or ADA. I don't know when it was installed. I think it was prior to my employment here, and I've been here 25 years, so it's been a long time. They're asking for new facilities. We are renting them porta-johns and temporary restrooms for their games. We estimate that we could do this for between $225 and $250. If that turns out to not be an accurate number, then we would bring it back to the board for consideration.
Questions? Ms.
A
Darby?
statement. What are they using now?
Porta-johns.
Okay. So, but there's no problem, they can still use, there's no problem right now with the porta-johns. They just want an upgrade?
Correct.
Okay. So, I'm all for all the schools getting the things that they need. And then sometimes we get the things that we want.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm for that as well, but I just don't see this as being a major, something that we need to approve, because you have the porta-johns and we have other schools and other needs that they need. And we've addressed airlines several times. Every time we come before the board, then we got something for airline. And I just want us to spread the wealth. I want every school to get what they need as well before we just pour everything into one school. Right now, I'll be honest with you, I'm not gonna vote on that in favor, because again, I just think that there are schools that are in great need right now.
I remind the board that this was a request from the principal of airline. He is in attendance tonight if you have any questions that he might can address for you.
Any other board questions? Mr. Bullard?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. With all due respect to my colleague, Ms. Darby, the restroom situation at the girls' softball field is deplorable. It's terrible. And yes, we have some porta-johns there. That is, it's not in keeping with how our schools operate. We do these things on a temporary basis. But at some point, we've got to address the needs for the long term. That said, I'm going to make a motion that we recommend the Bossier Parish School Board authorize our staff to proceed with the project Airline High School softball restroom improvements with funding through the bond funds.
Okay. We have a couple comments. I think Mr. Buckhouse?
Mr. Roger, did we upgrade to the bathrooms at Plain Dealing to where they now have facilities indoors instead of, I don't think they had any this year, but they had porta toilets the last couple of years. What is Plain Dealing using now?
They had a porta johns on site, and then last year we created access to the old band room, or new, it may still be the band room, for access, because it's right there next to the softball field.
So they can get in
Yes, sir.
indoors and not have to use the porta toilets anymore?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Cochran?
Could I ask you a question?
Sure.
Can we amend this to also come from the bond money specifically instead of for,
Yes, sir, he did.
or we have, you did on
He
your-
did in his motion there.
Okay.
And if I could, I know Mr. Cochran has something to say, if I could, to my colleague, Mr. Bullard, I would like to second your motion with an amendment. I have done the math, and I would suggest that we take this out of the interest and premium revenue, because I have done the math, and I believe we can cover everything on our agenda tonight out of the interest and premium revenue. I would possibly recommend a modification to your motion.
I have no issue with that.
I would
I would
second the
amend it.
motion with, to come out of the interest and premium revenue, because according to the
Premium
math,
and
we have the
interest, yeah.
capability to pay for everything on this, and still, in the interest of Ms. Darby's comment, have other funds still out there that we can address
Yes.
some other locations with.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
interested in. Okay.
That's fine.
And I would second that motion.
Okay. Mr. Cochran, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I think everything's going to work out, but I did just want to point out that we do have an existing building there that used to be usable facilities, and now they're not. So there was already at one time restrooms there. They're just so out of shape and been out of shape. My daughter was there 6 years ago, and we really couldn't use them then either. Or you wouldn't want to use them if you had other options. So we are bringing in the porta potties, but they're sitting beside an actual building that we can't use, and it's actually a danger anyway. So they need to get out there and take care of that also. So.
Well, I will,
Because the new bathroom would go where the old one is, right?
That would be our goal, yes, sir.
Okay.
So that would replace the old ones?
The old is just an Ahern building they adapted to a bathroom.
Like a portable
It's
building.
really was not feasible. So
So-
we would remove that, and we would do concrete and block.
Replace it.
Yes.
so I will renege my statement based on the information that was just given.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion by Mr. Bullard, and we have a second by Mr. Newman. All in favor, please vote. All approved? Thank you. Number 10, request Airline High School baseball field lighting. Mr. Roger.
Airline has formally requested that the baseball field lighting be replaced with LED lights and metal poles. Those poles were brought in 1984. They are showing signs of fatigue in their age. We have lost several poles on the softball field and we had no choice but to replace because of the conditions of that field, and they're now requesting that we replace the baseball field. And this estimated cost, based off of history, is between $225 and $250.
And other than the girls softball field that was just done by a generous donor,
That
how does-
field was
how
done
does-
by maintenance.
oh, that was done by maintenance, okay. How do the lighting compare at other high school fields?
So, about a year or two ago, the board asked me to file for a grant to replace the field lighting, which was not successful. So I went around and evaluated all the fields and the looms of the fields. So we design our baseball fields like Parkway and Halton and et cetera. We design those now to run 50 looms in the infield, 30 in the outfield. Airlines, by memory, I looked at it briefly earlier today, but the airline's outfield was running around 8 looms on average, infield averaging about 10. So dramatic difference. Even in the old days, in the old lighting, the metal halide lighting systems, they were designed for 30 looms. That's what's there now, which is metal halide, but it wasn't even designed professionally. It's still underrated for conditions that we design for today.
Board comments? Ms. Darby?
What does the other baseball field, are they up to date with the LED light?
We
lighting?
started the baseball stadiums and baseball fields over the years. A mixture of bond and replacement, like when we had weather tear down the poles at Airline, we went ahead and just replaced them because it just wasn't cost conducive to keep putting them back up. So we're about 60% on stadiums, LED metal poles up to date. There's Bossier High and Plain Dillon High. I believe there are only 2 stadiums we got left that aren't LED, if I can recall right. Baseball fields, all of Parkways has been LED, all of Halton is LED. Benton is not LED, but it has newer lighting, so it still has a good light. You have Bossier High, Airlines baseball, and then you have Plain Dillon that does not, well, Plain Dillon softball has LED, baseball does not.
Okay, so is there a plan to get them up to date?
We would like to, but the funding has been an issue. Maintenance does not have funding that allows for the replacement of that. We've been using our deferred maintenance funding to try and catch up with the air conditioning downfalls, and that's going to be an ongoing battle funding because air conditioning continues to
Mr. Roche,
go
could I
up.
request that we get some feedback on the remaining fields that aren't either new and/or LED? In the case of Benton, we know it's new, but I know we've got LED everywhere. Could you give us like a report back here, maybe
You want
later
it
in the
now,
summer?
or you want it in writing? I have it in front of me. I just basically gave it to you, really.
Okay, yeah, it's
you
like
said-
Bossier. If you would come back in writing, maybe give us something similar to
Okay.
this for anything that we have left over, and then that way we could possibly address the rest of them across the board and maybe be done with that upgrade for a while.
Well, we will be having another building and grounds, probably before the next board meeting, or maybe that Tuesday
Yeah,
before, I'm
that'd be
sure,
fine.
because we have requests coming in, and, so,
Yeah, I think
But you
that'd
said
be
that the
excellent.
ones were
Be good.
Bossier High, Plain Dealing, and there was a third one?
Yes, Bossier High Stadium is wood poles, some of them original from the 1960s. You
I
have,
was there.
but you have Bossier High baseball softball facility, wooden poles, outdated lighting. That's 96 models is when those were put in. You have Plain Dillon Stadium. You have Plain Dillon baseball, Airline baseball. And I think that covers the last of the LED stadium lights that need to be wooden pole
Yeah.
and transfer. Benton High does not have LED, but they have an updated lighting system and metal poles. If we did Benton High, we probably would be looking at $250,000 to do both softball and baseball. Not cheap, but relatively cheap in speaking. You do a Bossier High, you could be looking between $400,000 and $600,000 on a stadium alone.
Because you have to replace the poles that are, and that's another issue with
And
airlines.
the
it's
overhead wiring.
turning into a safety issue, because I've been out there when the wind blows and those poles.
Well, when those poles go down at a stadium like Bossier High or a stadium at Plain Dealing or et cetera, what you're gonna run into is you're gonna not just have the replacement of the pole cost, you're gonna have the replacement of the damage cost that whatever that pole lays across. And Bossier High is gonna lay across some stadium, more than likely.
Well, if you don't mind bringing that back to us so we can proactively approach those, that would be.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think that'd be great.
I will email you as soon as I type that up in the next couple of days, and then I will bring it to the next grounds for you.
And I make a motion, we approve.
Okay, Mr. Bachus, you're fine? Okay,
He answered my
okay.
question.
So we
Make a
have
motion, we approve this out of interest and premium revenues.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion. Second by Ms. Darby. Please vote. Okay. Thank you. Number 11, Bossier High School Digital Marquee. Mr. Cottom.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Smith. So Bossier High has requested to replace their existing, called a static marquee sign. When you come into the school, there's a 4x8, kind of just a static marquee. They have a small little LED that's just not very, it works, but it's kind of substandard. So we got a couple quotes in from two different companies, and depending on whether, I guess, the decision to go on, have a board on one side or have a board on both sides, is going to kind of dictate the cost. So right now, that cost would range $30,000 to $50,000. Now, the dual board will require additional electrical work service to be brought in. About 50, 60 feet away, there's existing power pole. So there's some consideration for some cost in that as well. So.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion that we approve this. This is something I brought forward to the committee. I would like to move forward with the two-sided board that would require the additional electricity, and it would still fall under that estimated $50,000 mark. I think Mr. Cottom, it was around 45, 46, somewhere in there, if you count the additional electrical.
Well, it was from 45 for the boards, and we're estimating maybe 5 to 10 for electrical, so you could be in that, you're in that range.
A second.
Yeah, we'd like, and that would be out of interest and premium revenue. Excuse me, I got tongue-tied there. And that would be for the double-sided, and that would allow it to be seen from the football stadium and from the boys' gym. And we know what kind of following our Bossier High School boys' basketball team has. So I think this would be a great update to that campus.
And just to make a comment before we vote real quick, I know this has normally been funded by the schools themselves. And I know that tonight we've made decisions about fencing, which has normally been funded by schools themselves. And then this is another one of the things that's been funded by schools. We are going to open Pandora's box when we approve these. And I just want the board to be aware of all of that because they have done their own fundraising. Has Bossier attempted to do any fundraising, or could they match funds, or has that ever been discussed, or?
Bossier is a unique campus, and things like that aren't as successful there as they are at other campuses, I think is the best way to.
The funding is not
answer that.
there.
Amen.
And to answer that.
Okay. All right, we do have a motion and a second. If there's no other comment, please vote. Motion approved unanimously. Number 12, Bossier High School picnic tables. Mr. Cottom.
Yes, ma'am. So Bossier High is requesting to purchase 20 new picnic tables with umbrellas options. Their request has come in. They have 10 that are basically damaged beyond use, and they have 10 others that are in usable but poor condition. So the school is requesting this. We do have a quote from one of our vendors for $22,600 plus shipping.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion to approve by Ms. Darby and a second by Ms. Poole. Please vote.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to add to that Ms. Darby's motion that we pay for this out of interest and premium revenue as well, please.
Ms. Darby, okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Brotherton?
do we need the umbrellas?
I
mean, I
believe
don't
they,
know, I'm asking.
I believe they come with the units. Ms. Tugwell, the principal, did all the research and investigation into that, and I think Mr. Cottom and Ms. Douglas vetted that out, and I think it's all kind of a package deal, and then it's, because it's not in a covered area, so the umbrellas would be used in proper weather
Protect-
conditions to provide shade and
It's
stuff
open
like that.
protection.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion approved unanimously. Number 13, request Halton High School, Harold Harlan Stadium Field improvements. Mr. Cottom and Mr. Roget.
Yes, ma'am. The title is this one, Halton High School has made a request to provide artificial turf at their football stadium. We have some estimated cost. We kind of used the parkway that was done almost exactly 2 years ago from today. So we've got an estimated construction cost from 1.2 to 1.3 million. There's some professional design services in there. Stacy, so I'm gonna have Stacy discuss about the track.
So we estimated it up to approximately 1.4 to cover some inflation numbers and what have you. But there's also a little bit I want to bring your attention, that if it possibly can damage some of the track when it goes across it. So we're going to have that number to help cover with that too. So, but I don't want it to be a surprise to anybody that the track got damaged during the installation of the turf. I want to bring that up front, so we don't say, hey, contractor tore up the track. There's a soft spot where they're coming in at, and it's probably going to tear the track
Well, the
up.
track's already torn up.
Right.
Mr. Roget.
We have patched it, yes, ma'am.
Well, it's been patched,
Yes, ma'am.
but it is still in need of repair.
Yes, ma'am.
So this could be done in addition to this.
We're admitting to that. We're trying to
I
be
know.
upfront about it.
I'm
That's
just
what-
trying to,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, we're
Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think it's no secret to my fellow board members that I am a big proponent of artificial playing surfaces for all our sports at all of our schools. Traveling the U.S. Throughout the years, not only with my son, just with my work, and seeing other areas of the country and of the state, even across the river that way, or across the parish lines that way, or back to the south, this is something that is coming to be the norm and expected versus the exception. I feel like this is something that we need to do. You look at the city of Ruston, they have done their high schools, their middle schools, they've got a complex over there. That area is thriving. And as I said earlier, I've done all the math. I feel like the revenues are there for this to be done out of the interest and premium revenue. And as we do this one, obviously, I would like to continue doing the rest of them on a kind of try and get a specified timetable based on revenues that we have left over in the bond fund. Mr. Cottom, after all this is said and done, if you could come back to us and let us know, hey, here's what we have left and here's where we can fit the next one in. And then I think Benton is, I don't know if the coach has some
They
reservations
wanted it on the
there.
agenda tonight, but our
Yeah.
agenda was full. So
Yeah.
yes, sir, they are going to want that.
But I feel like this is something that serves the communities, serves multiple levels of children, and it is something that improves the look of the campuses as well. When people travel in, they notice the turf, talking to different coaches. The only times they play on grass these days is when they're playing in parish rivals. Anywhere else they go across the state for playoffs, preseason, spring games, they're playing on turf. And here we are, the only grass fields they play on are the ones that are in their own parish. So with that said, Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve this to be paid for out of the interest and premium revenue, because once again, we have that money there, we need to spend it, and it's not taking away from anybody else's grab bag with the bond construction fund. And then, Mr. Cottom, if you could come to us with the timetable to do the next field, that would be wonderful.
Yes, sir.
And would Halton's balance of their 419 go towards that from their bond fund?
We'd be glad to give it to you.
I would think that
We're
once
not
it's made
ugly.
available,
No,
yes.
I'm just asking because that's a large pot of money.
And they have LDs sitting out there as well from some other projects, and I think that's kind of like an unwritten agreement that, yeah, once those LDs come back in, it kind of goes back into the main fund. If we can get this done, then those are going to come back into the main bond fund to where they're usable for across the parish. Because that's what we want to do. We want to get things great across the parish. So,
I have a question, Jason. When, Stacy, when you are talking about the track, that's just understanding that's a project, the full fixing of the tracks, a future project. This is just saying, hey, it's gonna damage the track, so we gotta have some money set aside for that, but knowing that down the line, the track will become a topic of conversation potentially
Yes.
for Halton High School. But for right now, we're focusing fully on the fields.
That's correct.
and making
Mr.
sure that
Haney
gets done.
did request to discuss the track tonight, but again, we're just, the time constraint, so.
I was just making sure there were two
Yes, sir.
separate things, and that's what I was trying to.
And I have just one question for that. So what was the first turf track that we put in? Was
First turf?
it at Bossier?
I think, yes, ma'am, I believe Bossier.
How is it holding up maintenance-wise? And I just think the board is going to have to come up with a plan of how we're going to continue to maintain and to replace these as needed on their cycle, because isn't the cycle like 7 to 10 years?
I think it's more 12 to 15, and we've been
Okay.
talking to some other parishes about how they're addressing that, and it's kind of like, I hate to use the word slush fund, but they kind of set aside a set amount every year, and then by 10 years, you've got a substantial amount just where you can start replacing them on a schedule. But it's currently running about 12 to 15 years, and I will say that Bossier's is a different design than the last
It's a
two.
different base. It's a gravel base. The
Yeah,
last two have been
Bossier's a
concrete.
different design than Airline and Parkway. And
So
then-
are they holding up, or are we looking at that amount of time? I mean, I'm just,
They're holding up well. All the manufacturers will say the same thing. They can only kind of guarantee in words so much. But all of them will step away from the mic, so to speak, and say, look, we're getting 12, 14 years out of these turfs. I think they referenced West Monroe's, the last manufacturer we worked with, and they said that one was there for almost 14 years, I think. It may have been 12, 14 years. And he said it did not need to come up. They just wanted to renew the look of the field. So, and once you do the base that we're doing, the systems we're doing now, you're not redoing the base. So you're really, your
so it's a
replacement
less
cost should come
expense
down,
if
right?
if the price and
Yes.
materials don't
So
go
I
up.
think the last number I got on that, and of course, things have been changing with numbers crazy lately, but last number I got on that was around 350 to 400 to replace a field.
Okay.
Kind of like replacing carpet in your house.
Yes, sir.
Mr.
Yes, sir.
Bachhaus? Mr. Bachhaus?
Madam Chairman, to add to what Mr. Rosier and Mr. Newman are saying, we all know that soccer is a growing sport also in this parish. And right now, Halton and other schools, Benton, that does not have turf fields, have to play their soccer games on Parkway and Airlines Field. So this would also relieve a little bit of wear and tear on the fields that we currently have, since that was a question, and I believe it would benefit everybody by it.
Mr. Newman?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, and one other thing, we started moving our soccer back away from the city, where we were paying the city and had agreements with the city to use their fields. Now we've moved all of that back to the home schools where these people actually can play in front of their friends and family. So, like I said, it's multiple benefits. I think I saw a field day going on at one of them the other day for the elementary kids. I think, like I said, it helps elevate the community, and I feel like it's something that we need to do. And I'm sure our folks at Barksdale, when they come in, they're going to see that, and they're going to say, okay, this is, we want to be in this parish because we know that they're putting forth the kids and facilities first.
So we have a motion by Mr. Newman.
Ms. Smith, can I clarify just something real
Okay,
quick?
okay.
Just, financial side. So line 4, Halton High has 419,000 in their, I'm gonna call it their fund. Are we using that and then supplementing the difference in premium and, interest and premium revenue?
I think that's what they
that
said they
correct?
would
We
do.
don't mind, I mean, hey, we're nice.
I understand.
We
We're
get
just
it.
trying to make sure.
We just want the turf field.
Mr. Cottom,
I
I
mean,
think
it's
that is how
important
we
to our
want to
community.
proceed. I think we want to utilize those funds and then supplement in with the interest and revenue, interest and premium revenue to get this done.
But I will say this, that when we replaced our bathrooms at our baseball field and the lighting that we got, we used our bond money. Okay, we're not asking for that now. We used our money. So
Right.
we've been using our bond money,
Oh,
I think
yes.
wisely. And it's not just the high school football. You're talking the middle school using these, the track, the band, the ROTC. So yes, every school in our parish should have a turf field. But just to kind of give the board members that don't know, grass fields, like what Benton and Houghton are doing now, I got some numbers today, and the only reason I'm going over is because I went all the trouble to get these numbers. Right now, it costs them about $14,000 to $15,000 a year to take care of grass fields. Turf fields, you don't have to do that. And every other day, they're having to mow. It's a lot of time that people don't think about and a lot of money for upkeep that, we won't have to do anymore. And I just really am so thankful that the board is voting for this.
We have a motion. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second by Ms. Darby. Please vote. It's approved unanimously. Number 14, request Benton Elementary School South Parking Lot Edition, presented by Mr. Cottom and Mr. Roget.
Yes, ma'am. If y'all could also refer to page 26, which I believe is your last sheet. So the top picture here is an area view of Benton Elementary's campus. So they have requested to provide an additional parking lot on I'm calling the south side of the campus. This would be a faculty parking lot. Currently, you kind of see the red square up there. That is a gravel parking lot that staff is parking. They're having to cross the highway every day to and from work. So there's sometimes a potential safety hazard. So we're, so this would be an opportunity. We've got to get into the actual specifics of this, but we're thinking, around 70 parking spots at an estimated cost, $250,000. Obviously, we will maximize our funds. And
we had asked for this to be put on, and right now, that parking lot across the street is gravel, and so we had looked at what it would cost to overlay that, because we've had several problems with people falling, people always crossing the road, where our teachers use that also. So when we got back the price on that, it was basically, how much was it?
we were estimating $250,000 just to
$250 to overlay that parking lot, but it really wasn't going to resolve the problem of not having enough parking. So when we were visiting out at Benton Elementary, there's a large space out there behind, and so we said if we could look at possibly adding more parking where the teachers could actually park back there and have that safety every day instead of passing 162. I don't know if y'all know where 162 is, but they fly down 162. It's very dangerous. You did have an employee that fell last year, correct, or was it a parent?
We had one employee
Yeah.
fall on Highway 162. She tripped over a hole in the parking lot that fell into 162, and then we had another employee that was almost run over just a couple of weeks ago because a car had stopped for her, and the car behind her didn't stop and swerved around, and it was, I was watching the whole thing, it was terrifying.
And they have staff out there directing as well as the SRO, and people still it's just terrible. So, anyway, so that's what this request came from, because you could add however many more parking spaces versus just overlaying and then use that for your overflow when you have events and everything. So, I can't make the motion, but I would appreciate
I'll make a
y'all's
motion to
support.
approve.
Second.
Ms. Poole,
You
second by Ms.
had
Darby.
me at safety, Tammy.
Yes.
So you have your motion. Madam Chairman, I just had a question. 72 spots when we're only parking 20 plus? I'm just curious if that's,
I would just kind of maximize a space.
okay.
We're going to get with the school and figure out,
Okay, I was just, because it says 20 plus, but we're going to do 72 spaces. I'm like, well, that's
Well,
more than
some of
W.T.
it's-
Lewis and
well,
Parkway
some
High
of it
School.
could be event parking when you have grandparents' day and stuff like that, but we're going to keep that in consideration. This is not a,
Okay,
just
and
a-
then a follow-up question, the red square, the lot across that street, are we going to keep that, or are we going to sell that? What are we going to do
No,
with that?
we'll keep it for
Keep it,
overflow
you still-
parking, because when you have events, I mean, it's full, and that's the problem, is that it was already parked with staff
Okay,
over
so
there.
that will turn into overflow parking,
Yes.
and then Will parents be allowed to park in this new paved
If
parking
there's
lot?
spots, yes, there's spots.
Will it have enough room for visitor parking there?
We'll
too?
look, we'll definitely look at ADA for sure and things like that to provide parking. And yes, that's the intent, it
Okay.
would be.
Yes,
All right.
and right now, the staff and teachers and staff are having to park across the street and walk, even when they're getting there early, maybe before the school zone. And that school is right there on that highway, and the parking lot's right there on the highway. And like Ms. Smith said, the traffic just flies up and down even before the school zone. So this will help the faculty and staff park in the back.
Madam
It'll be a
Chairman,
safety
was that motion to pay for it out of the interest and premium revenue also?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
just wanted to make it.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second by Ms. Darby? Please vote. Everyone's in favor. Number 15, Benton High School Outdoor Dining Room, presented by Jason Cottom and Stacy Roget.
So item 15, Ms. Clark, the principal at Benton High, contacted me about some ideas to try and help expand her dining area so she can reduce the amount of lunch shift she has. We looked over the facilities and came up with some creative ideas. And in that, was the map may be attached to your deal. We're looking at adding some concrete pad with some low fencing, just to really, it's not necessarily a security fencing, it's more of a corral fencing to make sure they stay within the areas, and a sidewalk adjoining to the wings to relieve some of the travel pressure from lunch shift to, directly to the classrooms versus everybody in one hall. She asked me to come up with these numbers. We were looking at it, and we come up with between $50,000 and $60,000 to accomplish this goal. So we bring that to the board for your pleasure. We'll move forward with this.
And again, in visiting with Ms. Clark, and she's here, I believe, back there in the back. I think there she is. In visiting with her, the children never, or go outside, never sunshine, and she was just thinking, she already has 4 lunch shifts. This would allow some of them an opportunity to get out there, but yet have it secure where they couldn't get to the parking lot and all of that. She would have duty teachers on site. She already has talked about this with Mr. Roget about having a secure exit that's right there off the side to do that. And we would be committed to do this out of our bond funds that are available.
Make a motion?
Yes.
Second.
Madam Chairman, do we want to use bond funds, or we want to continue to use up the interest and premium revenue?
Well, Benton High School has the 201, so we can do that out of that. We'll use that premium and stuff when we
Fair
get to our
enough.
turf field, when we
Yeah,
discuss
well,
that.
and to that point, I'd like to note that with the addition of the Halton High School supplemental revenue that'll be coming in, we'll still have about $500,000 left. So we're well on our way to being able to fulfill a lot of these things across the parish. So let's go.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Ms. Poole and a second by Ms. Darby. Please vote. Thank you. We did it. We got through 15 items.
And 5 minutes to spare.
Yeah, one more item?
The supplemental item for number 1.
Oh, we gotta go back, okay, that's right, I'm sorry. Okay, so on the construction funds too, we added that as an agenda item, and to go back and to switch those funds to the dedicated construction fund, but to still have them committed underneath those pots where they are.
Madam Chairman, I make the motion that we,
Okay, before we vote, we need to know if there's any public comment. No public
Okay.
comment.
I make the motion that we transfer all currently uncommitted bond funds to the district committed funds as recommended by our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Bamberg.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Poole, second by Ms. Darby. Please vote. Thank you, and everyone should leave happy tonight. The Building and Grounds meeting is adjourned.